first question an organization has to ask itself before jumping into social media is, are we ready? In order to assess this, you can do what we call a readiness interact with the audience. You need to find out what team members are already familiar with social media. Who would we have that could go on to a social media team? And do they have time to take on new tasks in addition to their current roles? Are there marketing initiatives in place that can be leveraged directly in the social media engagement? For instance, in a social media marketing campaign. So are there marketing initiatives that we can already plug into and augment? Does this organization have all the skills and resources it needs to execute the social media plan? Do we have writers? Do we have people who could produce the imagery that we want? Another question would be, is the organization capable of and willing to collaborate internally to achieve social media objectives? Is upper management on board? Does everyone understand how social media is important to the current platform of serving our customers? Who are we trying to reach? Before your organization adopts a social media presence, you need to determine what portion of your customers and clients you want to reach over social media. And the first step in this process is analyzing your markets. A tool that's very helpful to do this is the Stp Analysis. STP stands for Segmentation, Targeting, and Positioning. And it's a common marketing tool. It's not specific to social media, so you see this used in any marketing initiative. But it's very helpful when talking about breaking down your markets for social media as well. Step one is market segmentation, and this is where you look at all of the people that you're trying to reach, and you break them down into manageable groups. Step two, called targeting, is where you select one or more of those segments that you want to pursue. So after you've broken them down into manageable parts, you basically select one of those target audiences. Step three, called positioning, is where you define a value proposition for your products and services. What can we offer them that would be valuable? And of course, the final step is then to develop a suitable marketing mix, a way of bringing that value proposition to that market. And we're going to start at the beginning and look at segmentation. Segmentation is the process of grouping people together based on similarities. Basically, what you want to do is think of every possible person in the world that might be interested in your products and services, and then begin looking at similarities among those people. Because if we look at the world, that's a pretty big amount of people, right? So we can't say the world is our stage, the world is who we're going to target. That's too broad. You want to be very specific in your marketing, and so you want to try to segment those people. And the more similar they are, the more easily you can target a message to them. Let's take, for instance, behaviors. Let's look at usage patterns among people. People who drink Diet Coke every morning for breakfast, that would be a behavior pattern. If I could take everybody in the world and take all the people who drink Diet Coke for breakfast and set them aside, they have something in common. So I'm beginning to group them. We could also group people by demographic, something like age or gender. So we could take all of the Diet Coke drinkers and we could say we're looking at just female Diet Coke drinkers. We could break people down by geography, location, region, urban versus rural. So I could say I'm interested in female Diet Coke drinkers who live in the country. We also have psychographic features to break people down. Things like their attitudes or their lifestyle or their personality. We could be looking for people who, for instance, like to go out and party and be, right, an extrovert rather than an introvert. We also have a new category that has risen with the use of media, and that's called Technographics. This is a way of segmenting people based on how they use media. Are they mobile phone users? What kind of social media memberships do they have? So we could get very specific. We could say Diet Coke drinkers who are female, live in the country, are extroverted, and who have Facebook accounts. We've now taken the world and we've narrowed it down. When segmenting a market, a tool that is very valuable is a visual tool called the Segmentation Chart. What this allows you to do is map out visually in a flow chart how you're breaking down your markets. So let's pretend that we are a manufacturer of commercial pizza sauce, and we want to begin breaking down possible markets to target our social media efforts towards. And we've decided that we service food service firms, other food manufacturers, and supermarkets. Those are our broad audiences. Within food service firms, we can service or we could go after independent stores, Joe's Super Pizza on the corner. And so once we have narrowed down these different market segments, having a visual chart is a way for us to look at it and determine what we've got. Maybe going into a meeting, we can play that up on a wall so that everybody can analyze it. It's just a nice visual source. Now, once we have our segments and we decide that this is the way we can break these people out in a meaningful way for us, the next decision we have to make is who are we going to actually target. So the next step in the STP analysis process is selecting which groups we intend to go after with our social media. There are three major targeting strategies that we could take. After analyzing all of our segmentation, we could just decide to go with an undifferentiated strategy. And basically what that means is we've decided not to segment. We're going to use one marketing approach, throw it out there, treat everyone as one big group. The second strategy is a concentrated strategy where we decide of all of our segments, we're just going to pick one, perhaps franchise pizza stores. And we're going to concentrate on that one particular segment with our marketing strategy. But we want to do a special marketing strategy for each segment. So we're going to break them out. Not going to do the undifferentiated, but we're going to have multiple segments, multiple strategies. Now let's see how this would play out. An undifferentiated would target all segments with a single marketing strategy. So you have to be sure that you have a product or a message that is going to broadly appeal to everyone. The iPhone is a good example of a product that has broad appeal. So they can conduct social media advertising that can hit multiple segments with one voice. A concentrated strategy is where you focus on a single segment, and this is best used where your organization has a very compelling value proposition for one particular segment, something that's going to appeal to a specific slice of people. You have a small budget, so you want to be able to get as much bang for your buck as possible, and so you decide to go with a concentrated approach. A multi-segment is the approach where you have multiple segments you're going to target with different marketing campaigns. You'd have to have very well-defined market segments to do that, and you'd have to make sure you have the resources because you've basically got to create a unique campaign on social media for each of these segments. Okay, so once you have segmented, then you have to decide who are we going to target. The final part of the STP analysis process is called positioning, and this is where you focus on creating a value proposition that is going to resonate most positively with the market segment you've chosen to target. Now, what do we mean by a value proposition? You have a product or a service, and you're wanting to bring it to that market. So how are you going to position it so that they accept it? There are many factors to consider. How do they perceive your product currently? Are they millionaires who perceive your hotel as a budget hotel? Are they middle class women who perceive your product to be for high-end wealthy women? What are your competitors doing? What does the competitive landscape look like? And how is your product pricing versus your competitors' pricing? Are you high, low, budget, expensive? And where does your brand come into play? When people use this product, are they going to become more loyal to your brand? So these are all things that you need to consider when you want to position your product properly for a particular market segment. Now there's a visual tool that is very helpful called a perceptual map or a market map. What you do is you basically pick some dimensions that are relevant to your market and you map those. And then you plot your product or service on the map according to how it is budget versus premium beer. And I've plotted the perception people have of each beer onto the map. This is a great tool for determining how people currently perceive your product and therefore how you need to market it if you want to change their perception or reinforce that perception. So let's step back and think about what we've done so far. In this analysis phase, first we determined, is our organization even ready to tackle social media? And if the answer is yes, the next decision we have to make is who do we want to market to? What are we going to focus on? We look at our market segments, we look at who we can target, and once we've decided who we're going to target, how are we going to position our product for that segment of people? Now, once we've done that, that answers the question of how we're going to plan to do things. But the next most important thing is, what are your competitors doing? And so that same STP analysis needs to be done of your competitors. You need to look in as many places online as possible to determine how your competitors are handling this same market and this same product. Look at corporate blogs, look at Facebook pages that they might have, Twitter accounts that they might have. Any interaction on all social media platforms should be analyzed. Now, what are you looking for? You're looking for any information that is going to help you beat out that competitor in the world of social media. What keywords are they emphasizing when they market? What kind of content trends with them? Did something that they post take off? Did they post a video that became viral? What kind of personas do they use? Do they do everything in a first-person kind of way, very casual, or do they take a very corporate, formal approach to this market? How are they positioning their own products? And what's trending? Are people talking about something that they're offering? And when they're talking about it, are they positive or are they negative? How many fans and followers do they have? So these are the kinds of pieces of information that you want to analyze. What you're trying to do in this first analysis phase is decide if you even want to jump in. And if you're going to jump in, how are you going to market? To whom? And how are you going to beat out your competitors?
Hi, Basic. Good morning. Mega love shout out. Next. So, magko-quiz na tayo. Salamat, Basic, ha. Salamat. Ano yon sa, ano to, sa may alison.com na course. Ano siya, about, ito yung course na to, the rise of, it's all about social media marketing and paano mo palawakin ang iyong social media. So, exam na to sa first, sa mga unang madami kasi to siyang, madaming topic. Ayan, choose one answer, segmentation map, perpetual, STP analysis. Tama sila. Mali. Perpetual map yung sagot. Ay, hindi ko binasa yung tanong. A allows you to plot your product and competitors' product based on both perception. Ayun, mali yung ating sagot. Tama. Next. A allows you to, A blank allows you to gauge how ready the organization is. Readiness o marketing analysis. Ayan, readiness nga, hindi nakikinig sa lesson. Ikaw yung tinago mo lang totoong English mo. Hindi ako yon, dito yung nag-play. Kasi video yun kanina. Mali yung dalawang, mali-mali yung pinagsasagot ko. True or false? Segmentation is the process of selecting the segment or segments you will pursue with your social media campaigns and creating a strategy that best fits the chosen segments. It's the process of selecting segments. Ano bang nangyari sa atin? Tatlong maling answer. Patay tayo nito sa exam na to. Next. Which of the following targeting strategies focus on a single concentrated kasi single eh. Ayun, nakatama din yung sagot natin. Nakatama din tayo ng sagot. So, 1:3. Isang tama, tatlong mali. Which of the following is not part of an STP analysis? Targeting, segmentation, propositioning, o positioning. Hala, patay tayo nito. Segmentation, targeting, at saka propositioning. So, ito yung hindi kasama. Ayun, 1:4. Ayun na. Finish. Ayun, bagsak tayo. 20% lang yung ating score. So, kailangan nating ulitin. Yes. Retry. Okay? Ang quiz natin na need natin mag-retry. Sis Jubel, mega mega love shout out. Good morning sis. Good afternoon dyan. Ba't ka nag-i-exam? Kasi part ito ng yun doon kanina, ito. 'Di ba may lesson kanina, conducting market analysis. It is all about social media marketing. So kung paano ka gusto mo sa Facebook, sa Instagram, sa Twitter, sa lahat ng social media form, ito ay a lesson. So after ng lesson, merong review quiz. Sa review quiz, dapat para assessment niya dapat maka 80% ka. Isa lang yung nasagot natin, bagsak yung ating exam. Nakikinig lang ako kanina pero hindi ko siya pumasok sa isipan. So, ayun, ito sabi, this module assessment enables you to review your learning so you can determine your knowledge and understanding of the module. Conducting market analysis, yun yung if you do not achieve the required standard after the first attempt, you can retake the assessment until a successful outcome is achieved. Ayan, ulitin natin paano yan. Ice candy lang naman plano ko ibenta. Oo, aralin mo pa rin ito kahit anong ibenta mo. Kahit magbenta ka ng laman. Aralin mo ito. Which of the following is not part of the STP? Is the, ano ba yung ano kanina? Sagot propositioning. Ito yon, yung hindi part. Ayun, tama na to kasi nagkamali na tayo kanina. A blank allows you to plot your products and your competitors' product based on both your perception and the perception of your customer. Ano yun perceptual map, ayun. Para makikita kasi doon kung ano yung product ng makukumpara mo, mapaperceptualize, ganon. True or false, segmentation is a process of selecting the segment or hindi, false nga iyon kasi segmentation is like hindi man yung selecting ng segments. Tama, false nga. Hindi kasi inintindi yung tanong. Ay, Diyos ko po. A blank allows you to gauge how ready the organizations to adapt social media is readiness. Readiness assessment. Ayan. Correct na tayo dito. Dapat ma-perfect na natin to. Which of the following targeting strategies focuses on single is concentrated. Ayun, dito lang tayo tamang sagot kanina eh. Sis Jubel, maraming salamat sis and congratulations. You pass. Well done on passing your assessing ng auditing social media. So, bakit 50% pa rin ako dito sa nakatapos na nga ako. Tapos na ako dito eh. Sa topic ng conducting. Tapos na ako dito. Ito yung kanina eh. Na 15 minutes. So, dito na tayo sa pag-audit ng ating social media. Ito yung mga topic. Auditing social media, setting goals, and selecting platforms, a wide area network. Ito yung meron kang mga binabalak na gagawin. Kunwari nga yung magtinda ka nga ng ice candy. Ayun, saan mo ba balak na itinda yung ice candy mo? Sa Facebook, sa Instagram? So, yun, may target ka na platform. Wide area network integrating marketing strategies, developing effective content, understanding the popular platforms, launching successful campaigns, managing the community, providing customer service, measuring, analyzing, and reporting the social media circuit, course assessment. Ayun, meron siyang final exam. So, dito na tayo sa auditing. Tapos na tayo dyan sa quiz natin. Auditing social media. Laman na lang ibenta ko. Oo, madali lang ibenta ang laman. Di na kailangan ng mga strategy. Ubarin mo lang yung suot mo. Matik na yan. So, ito, may video kasi ito. Na-play na ko to doon sa Premiere eh. Pero i-live ko na lang at i-continue ko ng buo hanggang siguro mga lang, saglit lang naman to. Ito sa alison.com, free siya. Tapos, kung gusto mo ng certification, yun yung babayaran mo. So, marami akong kinuha dito na iba-ibang course. Siguro yung mga kukunin ko na lang na certification yung sa health. In-enroll ko na, madami na akong in-enroll dito. Pero doon sa kabila, sa udemy.com, nakuha sa udemy.com. Dito, alison.com, ito is educational website din. At dito na tayo, social media strategies, course 3, topic A, tools for social listening. Ayan, mag-on na tayo ng video.
Let's begin by talking about the importance of social media auditing. When formulating a social media strategy, It's essential that you figure out if and where your organization is already engaging in social media activities. So as part of the market analysis and audit stage of strategic social media operations, you're going to determine if your organization is already doing things and gauge how effectively they're doing those things. So an audit provides a snapshot in time of where your organization stands in its current social media capacity and performance, and we'll be looking at key areas of success and areas that require improvement. I mean, after all, if you're going to set in motion a new social media plan for an organization, it's very critical that you know how things are already operating. Now, the primary approach for determining how well an organization is managing its social media presence is called social listening. Basically, you're going to go out in the social media world and listen to what's being said about your organization or your brand. Now, for a larger brand, this can be very challenging because there can be a lot of activity. For a smaller brand, a small operation, there may not be that much activity related to your brand. Either way, you want to be sure that you document what you find in a spreadsheet or a database so that you can easily access the information and grade it or analyze it, run trend reports. When you work for a larger operation, there can be a lot involved with social listening. And so there are tools that exist to make this job a little easier. Some of those are put forth by Google. Google has a tool, for instance, called Google Alerts, where you can put in a term or perhaps your organization name, and Google will alert you anytime that term or name is mentioned and tell you where it was mentioned. This is much easier for you than going out and having to find these mentions yourself. There's also a tool from Google called Google Trends that will tell you if a term is being searched frequently, how much it's being searched. There are other tools. I'm not going to read through all of them, but I do mention some here. One called Social Mention, one called Topsy, and in a moment I'm going to show you one called Trends Map, which visually charts trending topics globally or by a region. So if you work for an operation that has a lot of social media activity, I encourage you to look at these tools and many more that are available on the market to assist you in social listening. In addition to social listening, one of the steps in auditing an organization's social media performance is to track how it's utilizing various social media platforms. By a platform, we mean something very specific like Facebook or Twitter, an actual account. So, for instance, if an organization has a Twitter account and has a Facebook account, you would want to know exactly how well you're utilizing those platforms and what kind of response are you getting. In order to do this, you track metrics, actual numbers, and these numbers fall into two broad categories. The first is activity-based, and the second is results-based. Now, before I specifically talk about those, what is our goal? Our goal in doing an analysis is to get some baseline figures for how the organization is conducting itself in these platforms right now, so that as we set new plans and carry those out, we have something to measure against. We have no way of knowing if we're more successful unless we have baseline numbers to compare against. So we're stepping back and we're doing an analysis of how we are functioning currently. Let's talk about activity-based metrics. These are hardcore numbers of specific things that you are achieving in each platform. For instance, in Facebook, how many friends do you have? How many posts have you made in your Facebook page? If it's Twitter, how many tweets? How many people have commented? How many people have replied? How many people have thumbed up or liked something that you've posted? So on each platform, these metrics are going to vary because each platform is different. But there are numbers that you want to grab and analyze. Now then we have a second broad category of metrics called results-based metrics. And these are indicating how those numbers have parlayed into actual website traffic for your brand, actual leads to new business, and actual conversion into sales. Okay, so let's say that we posted something on Facebook, and from that one Facebook posting, we had 10 phone calls from interested customers, and 2 out of those 10 phone calls turned into actual sales. So the activity would be 1 post in Facebook. The results would be 10 phone calls, 2 sales. Now, you could track all of this just in a spreadsheet, but that can get very cumbersome, coming up with your own way to track all of this data. And again, if you're a large organization and you've got a presence on a lot of different social media platforms, we're talking about a lot of data. So just as there were tools to help you with social listening, there are what we call grading tools to help you analyze these numbers. There's hundreds of them, but several that I want to mention. One is called Marketing Grader from HubSpot. There's one called Nibbler. There's another one called WooRank. And they all function a little differently, so you really need to step back and decide what metrics are most valuable to you as an organization. What numbers do you need to be tracking? What do you need to know? What baseline figures do you want? And then pick the tool that's right for you. Now, some tools are free, but most of them are costly. And they vary in cost based on what they can offer, and many of them have levels of plans. So if you're a small organization, you may not need the number of metrics that a large organization needs. But some of the things that you want to look for is, does this tool have not only the ability to just count things like the number of posts, but can it dig a little deeper? Can it actually analyze the quality and the style and the voice that you're using across social media platforms and tell you if you're being consistent or not? Can it look for things like tags and the use of keywords? Can it measure the amount of audience participation that one of your content posts generates? Can it check for consistency in how you're publishing across all channels? Are you being a regular publisher on Facebook, but you're only tweeting once a month? And so it does an analysis and a comparison and tells you that you're not being consistent across all channels. Does it have the capacity to look at your content and tell you if it's easy to share or not? Keep in mind, social media is as powerful as it is because it's a relationship platform. People see something that they like, they want to share it with their friends and their network. And so your content may not be easily shareable. So people may like it, but they can't share it easily. So these tools are going to assess those kinds of metrics and let you know what your baseline standard is today so that you can make plans for tomorrow. One of the final steps in auditing an organization's social media presence is determining how their audience feels about them. We call this sentiment, and there's a few terms you need to understand when you're getting ready to measure sentiment. The first is influence, and by influence we simply mean the physical size of your audience. In terms of social media, this could be how many followers you have or how many retweets you receive. It could be how many people link to your blog, the popularity of your sites, and so on. The more influence you have, the larger your audience, and the bigger the impact on your social media. Now think of it like this. If you tell me something and I only have 2 friends, how big is my influence? I might tell 2 people your secret. But if I have 100 friends, my sphere of influence is much greater, therefore the impact on you is much greater. So that's what we're referring to with influence. By sentiment, we're referring to the polarity of comments that are distributed across social media about your organization or your brand. And these are usually measured as positive, neutral, or negative. So again, let's say that you post something and you have a large audience and 90% of that audience feels very positive about what you posted. That's what we refer to as their sentiment. So the influence is the number of people. The sentiment is how they actually feel about something you've posted. And then finally, we have something called volume. Actually, this is also referred to as buzz, or your share of a conversation. If people are buzzing about a topic, that means it's very popular. And so the volume of comments is going to be much larger. So we're measuring how much something is being actually discussed on social media. I've already shown you some tools that you can use to look at trending of topics. So we want to know, how big is our audience? How do they feel about what we're putting on social media? And are they talking about it? What kind of buzz are we generating? Is it positive, neutral, negative, and how much of it is there? We can use a measuring tool called a sentiment analysis to measure these things. What it's measuring are general attitudes towards your brand or your product or your service, and it's using those three polarities I already discussed: positive, negative, or neutral. If you look at my screen, I've got an example of a sentiment analysis chart, and it's comparing positive, negative, and mixed emotions about a particular topic across 142,000 posts in December of 2010. And you can see that for the most part, there's a mixture of positive and negative comments. There aren't very many people who have mixed or neutral feelings about whatever this topic was. Now that you understand what we mean by sentiment and what a sentiment analysis is, you need to decide how you want to conduct those analyses inside of your own organization. Your first option is to just do it manually. You could analyze all of the data available across social media platforms and begin keeping that data inside of a spreadsheet or a database. But what this means is that somebody is going to have to manually read posts, locate information, determine whether it's positive, neutral, or negative, and start tracking those statistics one by one. Instead, just as there were tools for grading and also for doing your social listening, there are tools for analyzing sentiment, and some of them are free, such as Social Mention and Twazip, but then some of them cost. And these fee-based services include things like Sentiment and Tracker, Viral Heat, and even Salesforce, which can be used as a general sales contact management system. These tools are very valuable because they offer interfaces that make the analysis of the data very simple. They create like a dashboard that you can review very quickly, search for terms, combine metrics, and they're very sophisticated in their algorithms. So unlike what you might think, where someone has to read an article and determine positive, neutral, negative, these tools actually have complex algorithms that go in and index the information in articles and comments and determine the polarity automatically without manual intervention. Now, speaking of manual intervention, let's just talk about document level versus entity level sentiment. Historically, and again, social media is very young, so when we talk about historically, we mean in the past 5 to 10 years. Social media sentiment analysis tools weren't the greatest. They had the capacity to go at what we call a document level or an article level to search for sentiment. In other words, they would look at an entire article and then, based on that entire article, determine whether the article was negative, positive, or neutral about your brand or your product. So, for instance, I'm using the example of an organic cat food company, and there's an article about the company. These tools would go through and analyze the article and determine this is a positive article about your company based on the entire article. But if you think about it, oftentimes inside of one article, there can be polarities within the article. The first paragraph or two might be about how wonderful your company is in terms of environmental concerns. And then all of a sudden, they feel very negative about how you price your product. And so you've got a shift in polarity right within the same article. Well, these tools didn't used to be able to measure at that level, but now They can. We call that entity level sentiment. And they can dive deep into these articles and using their algorithms, so again, no human intervention necessary, they can deconstruct an article and analyze the different parts. And so they would be able to look at the article about the cat food and determine, hey, there's mixed emotions here. They're positive about your company and its environmental concerns, but they're negative about your pricing. And so their metrics would provide you with that information. The final area that you want to focus on when you're auditing your brand and its current impact in social media is unsolicited feedback. Unsolicited feedback is feedback that you didn't ask for. Many times customers have opinions that they want to share, and they'll share them anywhere. So it may even be outside of the social media platforms that you formally utilize already. It could be something that they've placed in Yelp or Google Places or ePinions. It could be embedded in a comment inside of an industry discussion forum. It could be a review on Amazon. It could be anywhere. And this is what we refer to as unsolicited feedback, but it's still feedback. It's still part of the conversation that's happening about your brand or product or organization. So it needs to be audited, and it needs to be part of that baseline that you set for what's happening out there and what you want to impact in your future social media plans.
Ayan, sis Dini, mega love shout out. So, natapos na yung, ano yun siya, auditing social media. Yan. So, next, ano ba next niya? May topic A pala yon, social listening tools. Then, next, meron tayong example of grading tools. Akala ko magko-quiz na ako. Kasi kanina, unang quiz ko, bumagsak ako. So, second topic na tayo doon sa pag-audit bago mag-quiz. Ano lang to, 2 minutes lang tong listening. Ano ba to? Social media topic 2, example of grading tools.
To give you an example of a grading tool and how it works, I'm going to open up my browser and take you to a tool called Nibbler. On the Nibbler homepage, you can enter in the name of your site. I'm going to enter in redcross.org. Now, you may have heard of the Red Cross. The American Red Cross is a nonprofit organization, and I chose that because it has fairly positive sentiment in general and has a very strong web presence. I've already run the report, so I'm going to, instead of us waiting, I'm going to show you the results of the report. And the score on a scale of 1 to 10 for the redcross.org in their social media presence is an 8.1. That's pretty good. As I scroll down through this page, I want to show you some of the metrics that this tool is measuring. They're looking at things like the general experience for the website, how likely people will be to use it again. And I can look at very specific details about that. It's testing to see how well it's marketed and its popularity. And as I scroll down, it gives priorities for improvement. It checked to see if they have a Google Plus page, one of our social media platforms, and they see that the Red Cross does not appear to have a Google Plus page. So they rank them with a 0 in that regard, and they encourage them to create on that platform. They check for things like code compliance, and do they have a site that is mobile compliant? They look at their Facebook page, how many likes, and how many people are talking about that Facebook page. They give them recommendations for how they can improve their Facebook presence. They look at directories that they're listed in and directories that they're missing from. So they could improve their presence by creating a listing on Foursquare. They look at their content. And then they get down here into popularity and where their website is ranked overall. And so I'm just giving you an idea of how a tool can dig into a particular organization and begin to give them metrics that they can use. If you look, they give them a 10 on Twitter.
Tapos na pala. Mag-exam na tayo. Tingnan natin kung gaano natin naintindihan yung pinagsasabi niya. Ayan. Review na tayo. Before you start your assessment, you need score of 80. Yun, ganun din. Kailangan daw maka 80% tayo. Okay, so start na tayo ng ating quiz. Unang katanungan. Teka lang. Mag-quiz ka na. Oo, ito na yung quiz. You should track metrics over a period of time to form a blank against which you will measure future social media activity. Ano ba yung choices, conversion, benchmark, baseline, sidekick. Patay, manghula tayo nito kay nakinig lang tayo, hindi tayo nakapagano. You should track metrics over a period of time to form a conversion or to form a baseline against which you will measure future. Ayan, baseline. Sidekick. Pwedeng baseline, pwedeng benchmark, pwedeng conversion. Kahirap naman itong exam na to eh. Sige nga. Parang conversion man yan yung unang to. Baseline nga. Tama nga yung baseline inis. Mali na naman tayo nito. 1, 0, 1 na tayo. Tama yung kinli ko na baseline. Oo nga kasi gagawa ka ng matrix para yun yung magiging basihan. Yun ang ibig kasing sabihin. Diyos ko po. What is the primary approach for determining how well an organization is managing its social media presence? Branding, documenting, auditing, social listening. Basahin ulit ang tanong. What is the primary approach? Okay. So, tama. Ito yung unang ito na yung social listening kasi. Di ba yun nga yung pag-audit? So, ayan. Nakatama na tayo. 1:1. Ayan. Blank feedback is feedback that was not requested. Solicited, unexpected, unsolicited, anonymous. Blank feedback is feedback that was not requested. Unexpected, unsolicited. Binigyan ako ng pang ni basic o yung pampalubag loob sa daming mali. Basic. Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat ha. Binigyan mo ako ng pampalubag loob kaya ang dami ko. Kanina, bagsak yung unang exam ko kanina. Ito baka mabagsak rin ako. Diyos ko po. Salamat ng bongga. Baka mabagsak ulit ako second quiz. Sis Dini, pangalawang quiz ko na to. Kay second, ano ko na topic. Which of the following measures the general attitudes towards your brand, product, or service? Which of the following measure? Ito, sentiment analysis. Parang yun yung narinig ko. Oh, nakatama talaga. Pang start ng business. Ayan na ba yung pampuhunan sa ice candy? Hindi. Pinagpawisan ako dito sa exam na to. Pangpuhunan na ba yan sa ice candy na walang flavor? Ice candy na walang flavor. Ayan, true or false? Google Alerts and social mention are tools designed to assist with social listening. True. Ayan. Oy, talagang, sorry, you failed. Sorry, you failed. Mini, mo ka lang Primitive Pulsar, mega love shout at panggata sa ice candy. Ayan, bumagsak. Kulang na lang ng 20% para ma-80%. Bakit kaya nung mali ko? Ay, oo nga. Teka, mag-retry tayo. Kay para tayo pumasa. Putik na ka, dalawang bagsak na ako, sis Dini. Paano tayo nito magka negosyo ng ice candy? What is the primary approach for determining how well an organization is managing its social media presence? So, yung sagot dyan is social listening kasi ikaw ay magsasurvey. Ayan, tama tayo, diba? Dapat 100% naman natin to. You should track metrics over a period of baseline. O, diba? Ulitin lang din naman yung tanong. So, ma-perfect mo na dapat siya. Hula pa more. Kaya nga yung, alam mong nakikinig ka, pero hindi pumapasok sa isip mo. Diba? Yun yung yung masaklap. Which of the following measure the general attitudes towards your brand? Ano yun sentiments. Yun. Tama ako dyan Isa lang yung mali ko kanina, di ba? Feedback is feedback that was not requested. Ay, dalawa pala yung mali ko. Ito din yung isa. Unsolicited feedback. Yung hindi mo naman siya hinihingi. Yan. O, di ba? Maka-perfect na dapat tayo. True or false? Google Alerts. True. Ito, true. O, di ba? Finish na tayo. Congratulations, yung pass na rin. Ganun lang talaga yun sa umpisa. Maghula-hula mode ka. After mo naghula-hula, kahit pa paano 100% mo na yung pagkatapos ng hula-hula mo. Yung video na inano ko, yung dalawa, tatlo, pang-apat na yun, na ano ko na yun na napakinggan ko na siya, pero dumaan lang talaga sa isip ko, hindi siya pumapasok sa isip ko. Iba pala yung yung nakikinig ka, tapos hindi mo iniintindi, nakikinig ka lang. Ayun lang, bagsak ang bagsak ang negosyong ice candy. Ice candy kasi na walang gatas. Ayan, corporate culture and social media. Ay, ito bago. Setting goals and selecting platform. So, nandito na tayo sa pang ilang topic na ba to? 1, the rise of social media, conducting market analysis, auditing, pang-apat. Tapos na tayo sa auditing. Bakit kaya yung auditing ko 75% pa lang, hindi pa natapos? Ayan, marami to siyang paano magsimulang negosyo ng ice candy. Oo, dapat intindihin yung pinakinggan. Wala may kodigo, wala may kodigo ka pa dyan, madaya. Kaya nga, diba? di ko na. Hindi pa matama-tama yung sagot. Diyos ko po. So, dito na tayo sa next topic na magsiset ka ng goals at saka mamimili ka kung saan mo ilalagay yung iyong negosyo. Kung sa YouTube mo ba i-market, kung sa Facebook, sa Twitter, sa Instagram, magsiset ka ng goal syempre. So, dito na tayo sa setting of goals. Ano bang nakalagay niya? Corporate culture. Ito na yun. Ito na yung next. Pakinggan natin. Setting goals and selecting a platform. 11 minutes. Lumilipad yung naririnig. Kaya nga, sis, minsan kasi.
Let's begin by talking about corporate culture and its impact on social media. As you know, every organization has a unique corporate culture, which is really its personality. And this gets exuded from executive leadership down through the lowest level employee. Let's take Southwest Airlines for an example. That organization has a reputation for being fairly casual. So the other night when my flight was delayed, the Southwest representative got on the loudspeaker and said, "Well, it looks like the duct tape is going to hold, so we should get you in the air momentarily." That's an announcement I don't hear when I'm flying United, because United is more formal in its corporate culture. It just doesn't allow their employees that kind of casual behavior. So when we talk about corporate culture and the adoption of social media, customer-centric cultures tend to be more successful. In other words, they're more keyed in to their customer, so they're more willing to adapt. Cultures that make adopting social media highly effective also get buy-in and support from their business leaders. From upper management down, they understand that social media engagement is important, and therefore they're willing to incorporate it into their long-term planning and to create cost models and budgeting and to scale those social media ambitions along with all of their other planning. These cultures also recognize that there's going to be different skills required to be successful in social media, and so they're willing to either train employees or hire employees that are going to have the strengths needed for successful social media. These cultures are also willing to identify goals behind each one of their social media initiatives. And because they set goals, they're going to steer the ship in the proper direction so that the social media can succeed. Let me give you an example. If your organization leadership says, yes, go ahead, create a Facebook presence, but they don't provide any budget for that, they won't give any of your employees the time to do proper Facebook posting, and they don't acknowledge Facebook in any of their long-term planning goals, then they're not really supporting that social media effort. And so cultures that make adopting social media very challenging have leadership that are not supportive. And they also are very demanding. They expect to see immediate results instead of understanding that social media is something that has to be built over time. They might be very sensitive to costs, and they might be resistant to technology in general. So one of the things that you have to assess when you're getting ready to set long-term strategic plans about social media is, do you have the support that's necessary for success? And how much work are you going to have to do to convince the organization that social media is important? We're next going to look at 5 very specific barriers that we see to social media adoption. We'll look at resistance to change, sensitivity to costs, fear of damaging content, fear of sensitive information exposure, and finally, fear of web attacks and malware. The first barrier to adapting to social media is typically resistance to change. Many organizations just don't want to change. They think the way they're doing things now is best. And your job as a social media strategist is to convince them that they need to adapt. Help them understand that they could be like the Titanic. By the time you see that iceberg, it might be too late. So they need to begin shifting course sooner rather than later, or the results could be devastating. Help them frame social media as an essential business practice rather than this thing on the side that seems kind of neat and trendy. In actuality, social media is becoming a part of business practices, and they need to see that. They also need to understand that their customers and clients and competitors are going to be using social media even if the organization refuses to. So in other words, it's going to go on without them. Refusing to participate just means that they're not going to be there to have a voice if a problem arises or a conversation starts about the organization. They'll have nothing in place to answer those concerns formally. The bottom line is not having a social media presence runs the risk of losing the next generation of customers who are going to assume that social media is already in place by your organization. The second common barrier to adapting to social media is sensitivity to costs. Yes, social media can be a low cost of entry. For instance, it doesn't cost a lot to tweet. However, for a large organization to create a strong social media presence is going to cost money. And once organizations understand that there are costs involved, some of them just aren't willing to spend that money. So the response of the social media strategist in cases where there is sensitivity to costs needs to be, first of all, to be very realistic about what the costs might be, and then to take a pragmatic approach. Look at budget, look at what the costs are, and maybe pick some sort of small social media initiative that can work within the budgetary confines of the organization, just something to pilot to try to convince upper management that this actually is valuable. Try to pick something that would have a high return on investment, big bang for your buck, so that management will see the value in going forward with other social media initiatives in the future. The bottom line is if you can show that this is a profitable effort, then they will increase portions of the budget next year for more social media engagement, and you can ramp up slowly. The third common barrier to adapting to social media is a fear of damaging content. Many organizations are afraid that somebody is going to post negative information or opinions about them in social media, and this is a valid concern. So as a social media strategist, there's a few things you need to get your management to understand. First of all, whether or not you participate in social media, people are already going to say what they're going to say. The people, the audience, are already on social media. And so what you need to do is ensure that you have a voice on social media as well that can respond to their concerns. Your not being there does not mean it's not happening. It just means that you're not participating. So it's like standing there with your eyes and your ears covered and just not facing the fact that it's happening. So people are already talking. The other thing is, people do not expect you to be flawless. It's not realistic. What they want is they want to know that you're going to respond when there's a problem. And so if a mistake happens, it's how your organization responds that matters on social media. Take an automobile recall, for example. People understand that parts fail and that mistakes get made in manufacturing, but they're going to be not very happy if you just ignore the fact that there's a problem instead of facing it head on. If you're very proactive and you face the problems and you face the flaws, you apologize and you make it right, people are very forgiving. So the bottom line is social media is not like a bullhorn where you're screaming to an audience. It's really much more personal than that. It gives you a platform, a one-on-one capacity to deal with one person's concerns after another, but you can't do that if you're not there. The fourth common barrier to adapting to social media is a fear of sensitive information exposure. Many organizations are afraid that their corporate secrets or privacy information will be inadvertently published. And this also is a valid fear. As a social media strategist, you need to let management know that you're going to train social media staff to avoid this problem. You also could consider creating what we call a release manager position. A release manager serves as a gateway to everything that gets published. In other words, they're almost like an editor, a checker. So nothing will get posted to social media without funneling through that release manager and making sure that it is okay to be posted. You could also ensure that you're going to formulate a response so that in the event that something does happen, you've got a social media plan that addresses how it's going to be handled and handled quickly. You also can ensure them that you're going to train everyone involved on legal issues, internal privacy issues, and information policies that are going to be part of your social media adoption plan. The bottom line is you can't guarantee that this won't happen, but it's not a good reason to avoid getting involved in social media. You have to simply take every step you can to minimize the risk. The fifth and final common barrier to adapting to social media is a fear of a web attack or malware. Some organizations fear that getting involved in social media will open them up to more points of access for some sort of attack on their organization, just like getting a virus on your computer. Well, the response of the social media strategist needs to be that you can't guarantee something won't happen, but you need to have things in place to minimize the risks. Things like well-managed networks with firewalls, the use of strong passwords, keeping consistent backups of your data, properly training your staff, and preparing responses that are going to mitigate the impact if something actually does happen. The bottom line is, again, you can't control this. This falls into the category of someone inadvertently sharing a corporate secret. It could happen. You can't 100% guarantee that someone is not going to be able to attack your organization because you're involved in social media, but you can do everything you can to mitigate the risks. These are not good reasons to stay out of the social media arena, but you need upper management to be well versed in all of the possibilities.
Ayan, natapos na yung lesson na time na naman na maghula-hula. Another hula-hula time. Ayan. Next, ano bang meron? Ang bagal ng net. Primitive Pulsar, thank you so much. Di pa tayo makapag-quiz. Wala pa. Naka-blurred siya. Hindi man siya inano kung social media versus business goals. Topic B na dapat tayo eh. Ayaw ma-open. Dito na siya. Ito. Wait ko lang. Nagra-rounding. Hindi naman tayo pwedeng tumalon at hindi natin masagot yung mga ibang katanungan na yan. Primitive Pulsar, thank you so much. This topic is all about social media, which YouTube is also included. This is all about how you can do marketing on social media platform. Like for example, when you um, create a business and you'll use social media to do your marketing on your business, then this course is for you and you learn a lot. But I don't know what's going on, this not opening the other topic. Then we'll go on the topic C, or babagal lang ang ate gidet. Ayaw ma-open ng ano na yun, lesson na yun. Teka lang. Ito yung lesson na to eh.